Yeah, and
Bonus
then
clip.
bonus clip. Another thing I'm thinking about doing, which is why I wanted to maybe ask you on here, is like starting a podcast.
Mm.
What do you think about you've been doing podcasting for a while.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I feel like podcasts are coming back.
Mhm.
Maybe it's time, but I don't know.
You
What do
have
you
a great voice. So I think you doing a podcast is a great idea just in the get go, for what I will say.
Oh, thank you. I actually hate my voice.
Well, that's a good topic to talk about. Something I was going to mention in the original call too was that it took me a really hard time to get used to that. I started out blogging for the past 10 years, 11 years. I was blogging for most of my content journey, and then I finally started making podcasts and getting used to hearing my own voice. And the real trick is when we speak, that bone conduction makes it sound deeper to our ears. But when
Mhm.
you hear the recording, you don't have that bone conduction, so it sounds lighter. And so that's why it sounds so different to us and makes it sound bad. But our voice is not a bad thing, and getting used to that is easier. It actually took me a lot longer to get used to video, ironically, despite the fact I love being on video. I love talking. That kind of habit of getting past your own mental barriers is hard of it. But yeah, I mean, do you have a particular topic you want to go into for the podcast?
So this is also the interesting thing because we were talking about me starting from niche, and now I'm like a podcast can actually be multidisciplinary in that aspect. So I've been kind of toying with the idea of it's gonna. I was like toying with ideas, but I realized that one of the big overarching features of me, everything I've been through, is like discipline and
Mm.
baby steps, and just it's very hard to outcompete someone that shows up every day. And someone asked me recently, he's like, "Do you think everyone who's popular on YouTube is good?" And I was just like, I think it's very hard to make 1,000 videos or 1,000 podcasts and not become good if you do it and you take it seriously, right? So yeah, so I was like, maybe that's the thing because people see who I am now, and with this course again, I'm kind of going back to when I was 20 and trying to figure out how to become this, but I never documented that process.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I was like, maybe I should call it the quantum leap, and actually not, and ironically, right, because I hate the quantum leap used to describe big things. And this is going to be exactly the opposite. It's like, how will you show up every single day in
Mm-hmm.
that baby step,
Micro.
in that tiny leap, that quantum
Yeah.
leap to get to where you want to go. And I think it was, so many people talked to me about like content and everything. I was just like, my TikTok, I was a challenge to myself. And I said, I'm going to post on TikTok twice a day for 30 days and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I just showed up every day and I did it. And so many people just stopped showing up. And I kind of wanted to document that process. Like, I wish I'd been documenting kind of the stress of building out this course.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was toying with the idea of like, 5-10 minutes, 5 days
Mm-hmm.
a week, Monday through Friday podcast of here's something that I am thinking about. One of my friends a few years ago that I also met through TikTok was telling me, he was like, I would be so interested just to hear what content you read that day, what you consumed, what you were thinking about, and what steps you took to get there. And I think a lot of people just don't have a person like that just to be like, hey, let's share today like what we're doing to get a little bit better and
Yeah.
do something interesting about ourselves. So I don't know. It's a very broad, but I
No, it's actually way more niche. I think you might realize too. It's not self development inherently. It's more of that becoming who you are, self actualization. That's the one I'm thinking of.
yeah.
And so you talked about discipline, but you also have the consistency. You also have the mindset and what you experience. So your experiences in particular, when you first came on the show, you were still kind of almost hard to kind of call yourself a content creator. Like you knew you were, but you just didn't embody that. Now you do. Now you have that embodying. Like just you feel so much. You seem much more confident in that. And like to me, the way you presented yourself from an outside perspective seemed like you were confident. You seemed like you had that content creator blood in your veins. And when we talked about it, you were still kind of like accepting that part. I feel like now that you have, that's a lesson you could talk about. And I'm already like thinking of like a dozen different ideas of topics you could talk about on the show. Like, okay, your content life, your science life. Each one of these, you could share a story or an anecdote of how you're developing on that journey. And maybe once a week, you could even update, or maybe once a month, update, like, here's what's new in that journey for that part of my life. The next day will be the other part of your life. What do you think? One more thing before I shut up is the idea of big content and little content. So many people see podcasts as a one stream, only one type of length. I've really tried to pull out that idea. It's like you can do it's a channel. It's like a YouTube channel. You don't have to do just one content length. I have my micro polycast. It's a solo. It's just me ranting off an idea or whatever. I have my medium content, which is a little bit more structured, but it's a bit more it's still solo. Then I have these long form interviews, and I think you could probably do that too. Maybe you could interview people around that topic and how they self actualize themselves to where they are once a week,
Yeah,
once a month.
yeah, exactly. Like there's so much to talk about there. And I think as I was creating this course too, I had a very limited group of people who I was telling that I was doing this. It was kind of very
Mm-hmm.
stealth until the last minute. And it's been amazing now that it's out just because they've seen the work I put in and they're just like, you hammered through this like every single day. And now here are all the fruits of your labor coming through. And it looks so magical outside of it.
Yeah.
But the people that actually know what I went through and they say things, they're like, you see those ads on Instagram,
Yeah.
like, I made 100K off the course, right? You're like, that's not real, that's fake. But for my friends that have been through the journey with me, seeing this launch like starting to go really, really well, that's a whole different perspective, right? When you see
Mm-hmm.
the work being put in, you see the stress. Like some days I was not good.
Yeah.
Things were not flowing and I've either forced myself to do it or I did some other things. And now seeing that, like, it's much more real, it's much more approachable. So as I get further in my career, I keep talking to people and people are just like, how am I going to get to where you are? And I
Mm-hmm.
almost want to give it's like a more authentic angle if Instagram starts becoming a little more portfolio, a little more distant, in that
Mm-hmm.
way. Is this like a really nice authentic piece I could bring in back to my platform? See, now, like you mentioned with the content, right? I was like not keen to accept the role. And now I'm like, okay, what does my audience need? What am I missing? If I go this direction with Instagram, I'm starting to miss that component of authenticity. Maybe this brings it back. And it's just a very interesting idea. And also like also a nice little discipline challenge, It's like every day or 5 days a week, 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes. It's not a lot of time, but it's showing up every single day. I can't hear you. Hold on.
That's on me. One
Okay.
thing I thought about, like when you're making those big pieces of content, like books and courses, is that consistency layer. It's really hard to do sometimes. The small content, and this might be a good way for you to do it. One thing that came to mind that I think would be really cool is there's an author named Derek Sivers, and he came up with this concept of a now page, where once a month you update it, like what's going on in your personal life, what's going on in your professional life, and you just share it with the world. And I loved it. I was like, this is amazing. So back in like 2017, 2018, maybe even 2019, I started doing it consistently. And I realized every month I'm changing this. I'm changing the page. I'm changing the text. What if I were to make this into like a series? And so I could just like keep it as a extra post from back in the day. And so from that moment on, I made them into blog posts. And so now every month I have a blog post updating people on my life. Who knows? People may not ever read it, but maybe my kids will one day. Or maybe I will go back and re experience what I had done. I actually turned it into a vlog too, but maybe what you could do is instead of doing a video, you could do a podcast. So once a week, once a month, you do a podcast version of that now page, if you will.
I love the now page. I'm going to write that down
I'm going
because
to send you a link afterwards too.
yes, please do. That's a really good idea. I really love that.
And I really love how you're approaching that idea of the whole Instagram too being like a portfolio. I love how Instagram has pretty much all the features. That's why I love it so much. It has stories, it has the reels, it has guides too, which is a whole feature most people don't even know about. And then obviously images too. And I think at some point, my guess is that they're going to take threads and imbue it into the main Instagram app. And so they're going to have like little tweets in between the images too. It's just going to be one giant feed. And it's going to be interesting to think about, like, that's your portfolio. And there's actually a really good book called The Portfolio Life that helps talk about that. People like us who are multidisciplinary. And I'll send you that too.
I
But the
think I
idea,
posted it yesterday somewhere.
oh, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Yeah. It's really great. And like Instagram's kind of your portfolio. TikTok's your experimental platform. YouTube is your quantum place. Your podcast could be your like self actualization place, your now
Right.
place.
Yeah, it's all those aspects of you coming together to one person.
And then your website's like the catch all. It's your portfolio of everything. Like, who are you in this place? Who are you in that place? I love that content ecosystem. It
Yeah.
makes me so nerdy about it.
Yeah, that's like as you grow, you start realizing like that's what it has to be. It used to be just a blog, right? And now it's like, here's all my things. I love the now page though. That's
Well, and this is exactly why I had you on the show too, because you are multidisciplinary. You just showed that, like you just embodied it right there. So yeah.
awesome.